Hello, everybody. Today we are going to talk about uh, request groups and placing requests on things in request groups and some of the pitfalls with this relatively new feature in Koha. But first, okay, so I am George Williams. I am the Next Search Catalog Coordinator at Northeast Kansas Library System in Lawrence, Kansas.
Christopher Brannon with Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network. Um, so, yes, we're going to talk about request groups or item group holds in Koha. This feature came out 2211, I believe.
I believe you're right. And I think we
And
might have done a video on it before, didn't
yes,
we?
so it's been out for a while, and it piqued my interest when it came out, but it was relatively new, and I was a little skittish of touching it. But this basically allows you to specify groups of items within a record and then be able to place holds on that group of things. So I think it was primarily the concept of this was you want to have things that are like in the same record, but they might be different volumes or different sets in there.
Yeah, that's
Or
the way I think I explained it. It's when you've got the rise or the fall of the Roman Empire, Volume 1 and Volume 2, that's really one bibliographic record. But if you don't have if you have like 20 of those, if you have 10 libraries and each one has a copy of Volume 1 and Volume 2, and somebody places a next available request on it, and they really want Volume 1, they could end up with Volume 1, they could end up with Volume 2. It's just you're rolling the dice. And so this
yeah.
way, the request groups allow you to put all the Volume 1s in one group and all the Volume 2s in one group. And then you can tell people to request the next available Volume 1 or the next available Volume 2 without having to create a separate record.
So this came out in 2411. It was based off of bug 24860, and on that bug, that was quite a big bug. There's a lot to it. This particular bug added functionality, but it was built off of the back of another bug where they just created the item groupings in there. So this bug 24857 created those groupings, but it had no functionality to it. You could group things, but it didn't mean anything. So two bugs did this. There was a lot of work that went into it to make this happen, and I finally got around to exploring this a little bit more. I know we've done videos on it, but it's like I really didn't have a way that I could introduce this to our system without trying to get people to come on board with it. But we have a situation where we have um, Roku's. I'm going through Roku's in our system. It was time for us to update Roku's, and I thought, okay, well, we've got 4 Roku's. We have 7 different streaming services on those Roku's, but we don't know what streaming services are popular and what are, what we're just throwing away money on. So I bought a bunch of Roku, so we have about 28. This is just a small sample on our test server, but I bought about 28 Rokus and decided, okay, I'm going to put 4 of each streaming service on a Roku. So I have 4 Rokus that are specifically for Netflix, and 4 that are for Disney Plus, and 4 that are for Max, and so on and so on. So they're all in the same record, and now I have them set up in these item groups so that a person can go and search for the Roku and then pick the specific streaming service that they want. So
Makes sense.
this is I think this is extremely helpful because if, here's the process. I'm searching for Roku in the system, and we still have some of our older Rokus in here. But I search for Roku, and instead of getting 28 or 7 different Rokus on the results, I'm getting the one specific one. These other 2 are going to go away. But so I get this one right here, and then I can place a hold on those Rokus. But there's some work that needs to be done on that, and I'll show you why.
Right.
If you go to the OPAC and you go to place a hold, this is what you are presented with. It automatically goes to first available. It depends on what your settings are. If you have first available holds on, it defaults to that. If you're
In our system, the problem would be that we don't allow patrons to place item-specific holds.
Mhm.
So they would be, without pushing them into groups, patrons would just be getting whichever one was up next. There wouldn't be,
Yes.
they wouldn't have that option.
Am I getting Disney Plus? Am I getting Max? Am I getting Netflix?
You're
On
just
and on and
rolling
on.
the
Yeah.
dice.
Yes. For them to be able to utilize the group holds, they would have to go into show more options, which is not intuitive. And then here, you would have the choice of next available item from the group, which this really doesn't spell it out very well, or a specific item. So what I want is what our Aspen users already get. It's pretty straightforward in Aspen. It's the OPAC and the staff side, which are problematic. Both sides default to the first available setting. And then here, I can have it set to next available item, but I can still confirm the hold, and it's still kind of a mixed bag if I don't specifically select a group.
Right.
So you have to select a group and then confirm the hold. So there were some changes that needed to be made. First off, I was hoping that there were some settings somewhere to force this.
Right.
The closest thing that's available, and I'm using our where's it? Our video loans. So our video loan here, the closest thing that comes to this is if I say on the OPAC item level holds, I can don't allow, or I can force. If I force it, it opens up that section, but doesn't force the group holdings, which is what I want.
Right. It'd be nice if there was an additional option if there were more options here, and one of them was force group holds.
Right. And, and of course, this only deals with the OPAC side. It doesn't touch the staff side. So, we have some room for some work that could be done to improve this greatly. But right now, all I can do with what's available is to nudge people in the right direction, and that's still not enough. So what I have done,
well, and for this, I can see the issue is that's going to affect all the items in this item type. So unless you have a specific item type for the things that are grouped, you're forced to choose one option over the other for the entire item type.
And that's kind of what I was trying out. So I ended up making an item group and making that rule, but it was just not enough. So I came up with a solution that would appease, not having to create a new item group or rule, and would appease, when these situations came up. I just decided that, okay, if we're going to do item groups in any particular record, we're going to treat it a very specific way.
Okay.
First of all, let me show you the staff side of this. Hold. This is how it looks on the staff side. So again, it
It
specifically goes to
defaults to
next
next
available.
available. Yeah.
So it's a roll of the dice as to what you're going to get. And this is the section that we do want. So I want this, and I want to take away this basically.
Oh, okay.
So let's look at the OPAC side of it first. The OPAC side's a little bit more involved in accomplishing what we need. The staff side's a little easier. But
So you want to try and do the same thing on the staffs on the OPAC, is to force next available from a group, right?
correct.
Okay.
So basically what I have is I have this statement that's looking for the OPAC holds page on the OPAC and looking for a select that has item that starts with item group ID. That's how I identify these specific records that have item grouping available in it. So it's only affecting that group. This is the thing that keeps me from having to specify a new item type for these types of records.
Okay.
So I identify that. I identify, okay, this particular record on these holds, there is an item group. So if I go in here and I inspect this record, I can see that there is a selection at some point somewhere. I think it's here that I'm looking for. I see that this exists. So there's a selection in here that has the name item group ID. It starts with that. And so I'm looking for that to say, okay, well, I need to modify this page.
Okay.
And so here I'm looking for an ID. I'm looking for several things. I'm looking for an ID. I'm looking for the for label. I'm looking for all these little parts, and I'm hiding them. Basically, I'm telling. Let's see, where is it? I'm telling. If I could go in the right window here, I'm telling this. Okay, if this exists, I want you to find all the parts to the request any section. So basically all of these elements in here.
All of those elements that could do an any, select any, or a select specific, right?
Right. Basically looking for this stuff, and I'm telling it to hide this information.
Right.
So we're hiding all of those components. And then the next thing I wanted to do is, because when you go in here and you say, okay, yes, you open this section up and I want to do the next available item. If I haven't selected a group, I could still press the confirm hold button, and that's confusing.
Right. You want to force them to choose a group before they can click confirm.
Correct. So
yeah, that makes sense.
So I've said, okay, I want to disable that button. And it's looking at this selection in here. It's saying, first of all, I relabeled this any item group. I'm relabeling it to select a group because I want them to select a group. Right now, it says any item group. And if I confirm the hold, it's going to pick from any item group, which is exactly the same as this up here.
Right.
So that doesn't do me any good. So I relabeled this to say, select a group, and as long as that's selected, that button is disabled. So I turn that label red, and let's see here. This particular section, toggle hold options.
I think that's the.
If this is turned off, I think that, if it's this.
Yeah, if you click that button, all of those things, you're forcing that to be open.
Yeah.
And you're removing their ability to close it.
Yes, yes. So I'm taking that selection away, and then on here, when that selection is changed, it's checking to see if it's anything but uh, that selection that doesn't have a value. If it has a value, then it removes the disabled on that button and makes it so that you can confirm your hold.
Right.
So
So
let
that's
me,
flicking the switch on the button on whether or not they can confirm it.
yes. So I've saved those settings now. We're going to refresh the screen, and this is how it looks to the patron now. So got rid of the any holds. It got rid of the selector to open and close this. It is highlighting this red. It's changed this to select a group, and as long as it is on select a group, I can't click this button. I have to make a selection, and then I can confirm my hold.
Cool.
So streamlined this a lot. So there was a lot of moving parts to make this the way I wanted it for the patrons. And this is only going to happen if this selector exists on a hold page.
Okay.
So
I guess one of the possible problems I see here is that there's no way that somebody could place a request in the OPAC for if there was an item on that record that wasn't part of one of the groups, there wouldn't be any way to select, there wouldn't be any way to request it through the OPAC.
correct.
Okay. So you want to make
Plus,
sure, so this is going to require some training for the people that add those items too.
well, so far it hasn't been a problem. This has been pretty straightforward, but for both staff and patrons. Um, and I kind of like this because if I had a mixed record like that where you could specify some items in a group and some not, I think that would be a much more complex and confusing record than anything like this.
Yeah, that'd be, yeah. Yeah,
It's like if you're going to have single items mixed in with groups, you almost need to just create a group for that single item.
right, right.
So I think that would be a little bit more straightforward than having them figure out, well, should I do an item specific or should I do a group? This would be straightforward. So even if you have one item that doesn't need to be in a group, I would put it in a group.
Yeah, I can see what some people might say about doing something like this is that why don't you just train people to do it with when it's really complex, and that's because it's hard to train a lot of people. And what you've got it down to is you've got a situation now where the only people you need to train are the catalogers that are adding the items to let them know that if there are groups on a record, they all have to be in some group or another.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
And that's a
this is
lot fewer
nice.
people to train.
This is nice because it's a record that I control. So I
Oh,
got to
okay.
set up the record, and it gives us an opportunity to play with this workflow, and they can see how it works. And maybe down the line they say, hey, I like the way that works. Can we do this with our DVDs or encyclopedias or multi-volume set books or whatever?
Right.
We have now opened the door to a working example for our system.
Right.
Going back on the staff side, um, I didn't need to be as complex with this change. On this one, we're looking for that selection, or basically we're looking for this group right here. So if I
Right.
inspect this, I'm looking for this request group label, or actually on the selection itself, enable request group. We're looking for that element in order to trigger this. So if that record contains this, then I'm taking away, or first of all, I am clicking on that option
Okay.
so I'm defaulting it to the group. And then the next part of it is I am hiding the request any section. So basically the first available section. So this is going to go away and this is automatically selected. So if I go in there and that's all I'm doing with that. So if I save that and I refresh, now it looks like this.
Cool. That's easy.
So it defaults to grouping, which is nice. I didn't take away item specific. If for some reason staff needed to request a specific item, I think that they would have more reason to do that than a patron in this case.
Yeah, I know that we have some libraries that have devices like this, and the libraries that own them often need to request the specific items so that they can get it back to the library so that they can fix it or take it out of service if they get a call from a patron that it's bricked and they want to make sure that it doesn't go to a different patron. They can put a request on it to make sure that that the specific one comes back to them to be fixed, so,
Yeah.
or removed.
So I was a little nervous about doing this because we're introducing some new functionality and both for staff and patrons, and I haven't played with it much, and so I did a lot of testing on this, and I also wanted to make sure that holdings weren't overly complicated for either side, and leaving confusion for staff or patron in how to do this. And so I feel like these modifications kind of completes the package and polishes it up really nicely.
Mhm.
I'm really happy with it. We've had no issues with this workflow since we launched the Rokus. And what's really nice is now that I have these grouped, I have a report that I can run and I can see, okay, which streaming services are popular. So now I can see what's getting used and what isn't, which we didn't have before. So that
Right.
was really nice. Um, on this topic, I will point out, one of the things that really stands out as confusing in setting this up. I can't remember if we mentioned this in our previous video, but what's odd about grouping items is when you turn this feature on, it's like you think, okay, I want to group these items, I want to modify these items, and you think, okay, I need to go to manage items, but there's nothing in here that has to do with grouping,
I
which
think
is
that
really strange.
with the most recent update we had to 24.11, I believe there is a way when you're adding an item to say
Yes,
that you can add it to a group. So I think people are working
yes.
on bringing some of these functions in and to make it easier to add an item to a group when you're adding a new item. And so there might be more coming down the road. It's I don't know what the
Actually,
status on this stuff is.
I take that back. Okay, yeah, you reminded me. Yeah, they did add this down at the bottom, so you can say don't add it to a group, create a new group, or add it to an existing group. So you do have that option. So that is there. So I stand corrected on that. However, uh, one of the things that's really strange to me, out of the norm, is that if you select items, all this stuff appears up here, and you can add, move groups, remove from an item group. I'm not sure. I don't know. I guess some people work differently than I do. It seemed It seemed like this was the way to try and do it. It was a little. It seemed a little obscure in the manage items. This seems a little bit more straightforward in doing that. But I don't know. I it's weird that you can do this stuff on this page to me. Like,
It's weird that this is where you edit the groups because they're on a different tab too. And I don't think there's any way to batch modify group stuff, is there?
um, trying to remember.
If you click on a couple of those and do modify selected, you can't modify any of the group stuff with the batch modifier, can you? No, not really.
No. So yeah, there's
So
some batch modification issues still with this. At least in this part. I don't know if you go into, well, this might be the interface that you use when you're running a report. Yeah, yeah, it doesn't look like there's any batch modification on item groups yet.
so maybe that's coming in the future too.
Yeah, that'll be a nice addition. But it would sure be nice if these modifications were options for libraries rather than having to go through jQuery. I mean, I'm really happy with how the jQuery worked out. I think it really makes things straightforward for both sides.
Right.
So
Well, cool.
so a lot there's a lot to talk about there, but I'm hoping that if somebody is looking at those item groups and holds, and they've had some concern about uh, the functionality on the OPAC side or the staff side, I hope that these modifications, these little tweaks in jQuery, uh, give people a little bit more confidence about trying this out, because I really do like it. I like um, how it's very straightforward, and you can keep things together in a record rather than having all these separate records with all these variations.
Right. I think that's one of the great things about groups. You know, I used to work at one of the libraries I used to work at where they would get like Star Trek. When Star Trek came out on DVD, it's, season one. Some of the libraries in that consortium would package it all together as one item. And the library I was at would take each disk out of the case, put it in a separate case, and then another library would take it and they would say, well, there's 7 disks in here. We'll put 3 in one case and 2 in another and 4 in another. And so when a patron did a search for Star Trek season one in that catalog, they would see the 7 separate disks at my library. They would see the one library that had, or 1 or 2 libraries that had the whole thing set to circulate as one item. And then they would see the other libraries that had, discs 1 through 3 and discs 4 through 7, and one library that had discs 1 through 4 and 5, 6, and 7. And so there would be like a bazillion, for one item, for one thing, there would be, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different records for the exact same thing because it was the
Yeah,
same DVD set just chopped up into different bits. And if we had had this function at the time, then we could have said all of them are on one record, make it easy to search for patrons, and then all of the different pieces could be different groups. So that would have made things a lot easier for patrons who would say, well, I wanted to see the whole thing and I've only got discs 4 through 6, 4, 5, and 6 here, or 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then they would place a different hold and then they would end up with disc 3. There was just too many different ways for the patrons to not succeed. And
yeah,
this function really helps. And that happened when I was at Boise Public Library. I had a new person I was training, and the person wanted to get the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. They had read volume 1 and they wanted volume 2, and they kept placing a hold on it, and volume 1 kept showing up. And it's like, no, we need to request the specific copy for that one, which is something they could do at that library.
yeah,
So, and it's just hard to train patrons, but if you can take the guesswork out of it by making the workflow so that they have to choose a group or they have to choose a specific item or they have to, to make it easier for people to not have to train them, to just make it part of a function of the software that it forces them to 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 succeed. is really what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to
Right.
force our employees and force our patrons to succeed when possible.
I feel like this particular enhancement to Koha really stepped up Koha's ability. I feel like it matured Koha with some of the other big ILSs that could already do something like this. This was I feel like a really good step in the right direction. And thank you to whoever suggested it or helped fund it, because it was sorely needed. Because our libraries have had to make do with multiple records, or just a little bit of chaos in their records. This really cleans things
Right.
up,
Right.
and I love it. It feels like it has freed me up to be able to offer it this way, in a way that not only helps patrons, because I was able to split up our Rokus. I didn't have to have all these different records, and I could better manage what services, taking a look at what services are getting used, which is a plus for us. And it also helps the patrons in that they can get what they need and not hold everybody else up, because they're getting the specific streaming service that they want, and it's making more of these available within this record. So I've seen a huge shift in just a week of moving people over to this new record, and splitting these things out this way and having them all together like this. So huge improvement
That's
overall.
cool.
I love it. So
I just realized that one of the libraries I used to work at, there it is behind me on the screen, the Boise Public Library Bookmobile.
this
So
is not
that's
one that
yeah.
I work at. Although one of our storage rooms did look like this in our old building, so it's pretty gross. Anyways,
it was good to see everybody again today, or not see everybody. It was good for you. I'm glad you're watching, and like and subscribe and all that stuff, and we'll see
and leave comments.
Yeah, leave comments. We try to answer comments. So we'll see you all in a couple of weeks.